Welcome everybody to Vibe Coding. You're testing superpower in the age of AI. Just some quick introductions and then we'll jump into it. So my name is Jeff Payne. For those that don't know me, I've been building and testing software for, I don't know, a few years now, probably 30 plus years. And in that time, I've run a couple of software consulting companies that focus on helping people accelerate their delivery and improve quality and security of their applications. So everything's software focused. I'm also a technical editor for Sticky Minds. Those of you that don't know Sticky Minds, it's a long-running online community of software testing professionals. Sticky Minds has recently been revamped, though, and we broadened it and consolidated some of our other online communities into one. So now at Sticky Minds, you can go there and see all sorts of great content for software testing, but also software development, DevOps, Agile, application security, pretty much anything associated with a modern software development process and approach is now on Sticky Minds. So check out stickyminds.com. It is free. If you're not a member, if you go there, you can sign up for free and access all the great content that is there. I'm very happy to have a special guest here today. I'm going to let her introduce herself. We're here to talk about vibe coding. Melissa, you want to introduce yourself? Welcome to the webinar series.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here. So I am Melissa. I am a VP of engineering for what is now mParticle by Rocked. We were acquired earlier this year. And my specialty and love is platform engineering, otherwise known as all of the pieces needed for us to get something done as builders, from the minute some PM gets a crazy idea to the minute that idea is in the hands of a customer and every step in between, from development to build to deploy to test, all those pieces. So that is my that is my passion, and my practice is here helping everyone do better at this. Because when we do better at this, it's our customers who win. So I've been doing what we're going to talk about today, which is some AI augmented development for a year, literally a year. I like to say that I'm not very far ahead of everybody else, only a couple of months, but in the AI world, a couple of months is like 12 years for the rest of us.
Dog years.
Yeah, it's dog years, right? So my hope here is something that we're going to talk about today will be useful to you. That's always my love. Something will be useful today. What I'm going to tell you today probably might not have been true 3 months ago, may not be true 3 months from now, but it will be the best that we can do today.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Welcome. Looking forward to it. So that's a little bit about Melissa and I. Todd's going to pop up a poll for you to tell us a little bit about you. Just 3 questions, just a little bit about vibe coding and your experience and use of vibe coding, and then a little bit on context for how you're trying to use AI these days to improve your overall software development or your testing process. So I'll give you just a few minutes to fill that out and enter, and then we're going to chat about the results real quick and just see what you all came up with. We will be sharing all this information, as Todd mentioned, at the end of the webinar for everybody who's registered for the webinar. So, vibe coding, I love how, and maybe as we wait, Melissa, we can talk about this. I love how terms pop up in our industry, and they just you hear about them for the first time, and then I swear to God, for the next week, it's all you hear about. Like
Nothing but
they run up and they just pull up, become
right,
huge,
right?
and some disappear really fast. Some never disappear, or at least they maybe go through a name change or something as they morph. But
Mhm.
it's crazy how fast vibe coding and the concept. And now, of course, people are using the word vibe for everything. Like that's the other thing I noticed. Like now, vibe is like I don't know what it is. A
It's
noun, a
catchy.
verb, an adverb. It's in everything, right? People use it for everything.
They do.
You
It's
know?
super catchy. It's certainly a lot catchier than the long form we call it, which is spec-based agentic software development. That's not quite
Yeah.
perhaps as
That's
catchy, more descriptive, less
yeah. It's
catchy
not gonna take.
vibe
That's not
coding.
gonna take hold. I
No,
wouldn't
something tells
trademark
me.
that.
No.
Very cool.
All right, I'll bring up the results here.
Great, thanks. Yeah, we're going to really focus on the first one. The other one's just some context for everybody about the audience and what people are interested in. But okay, let's see here. So it looks like, yeah, so as you would expect, 72% of people haven't yet tried vibe coding. Some are
72%
using
of you
it
are going to have
for
homework.
development, test, and some, a very few amount are using it for kind of CI/CD DevOps. Is that surprising to you, Melissa?
A little bit actually. I'm surprised that more people haven't tried it, even for a toy, even just for a minute, even with one of the free tools. So that's going to be some homework. We're all going to have homework. There are
There you
free
go.
tools to boot you up. You're going to have one. We'll get there, but you're going to have one specific task you're going to have to try.
There you go. Yeah, and you mentioned to me, Melissa, when we were together at the last conference, that one of your kids was playing around with vibe coding and actually like put something out and made some incredible progress really quick trying
Yeah,
some of this stuff out. I thought that was
my
a cool story.
my 11-year-old daughter, I got her booted up with Cursor, and my 11-year-old daughter made a fan website for her favorite TV show. She probably could have figured out, but I just did the little bit of work on deploying a flat website onto a GCP bucket and route pointing a DNS name, at a GCP bucket. I vibed it, even though I know how to do it, but she probably could have figured it out. But I got her with
Nice.
Cursor writing raw JavaScript, figuring out how to download images, where do images go. She went from I've never seen a line of code in my life to publishing a
Hmm.
really cute little website for her favorite TV show. And it's literally deployed. It's got a domain name in front of it, and her and her friends go to it and play with it.
Nice. So if anybody's looking for an intern, I
Mhm.
think Melissa's got one bubbling around there. Probably some more.
But if an
That, yeah.
11-year-old can do it, everybody
Yeah,
can
no,
do it.
that's awesome. That's so cool. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for filling that out. We're going to jump into content now, and I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can see Melissa. There she is. Yeah, so let's talk about vibe coding. First of all, there are a lot of people here who haven't tried it. That probably means there's a lot of people here who have heard the term, but they don't really know what it means. What does vibe coding mean to you? And where did it come from? Like I mentioned, it kind of bubbled up out of almost nowhere. Where did it come from, and how did it gain traction so fast?
It did. I mean, it was really an extension of how good the LLMs have become with code, which I don't think that's something anybody expected LLMs to be particularly good with code. I know
Mhm.
people, we sometimes get a little cocky, code's really hard. AI is going to replace the doc writers and it's going to replace the boring tasks, but it's not going to touch us. Code's too hard. And then imagine our surprise that actually code is just structured text. LLMs are actually really good at
Can't see that.
structured text, um, especially ones that have very discrete success criteria. So that's really all vibe coding is it's the same software development we've always done. Well, at least the way I practice it, because you could definitely do some garbage in, garbage out shenanigans here.
Mm,
But fundamentally, when I talk about vibe coding, it's the same software development process we've always done, but one of your partners is not an intern you hired out of college. It's not a senior engineer. It's you're working with an AI instead. Everything else is honestly pretty much the same, right? You start with a spec. You start with a definition of what needs to get done, right? What problem am I trying to solve? You include the definition of good here. How does it know? How do we collectively know we've solved this problem? For example, build works and all tests pass, and this page shows up and has this text. Um, and then we iterate, we break up the problem into chunks. The LLMs sometimes are good at doing this themselves, sometimes they're mediocre. Build a problem up into chunks, and then we have a almost a pair programming session, right? Extreme programming session style to generate the output until we hit success or we hit, oh no, I'm lost in a rabbit hole. Um,
yeah.
and so it moves you from an engineer role into a supervisor role, a manager role, a PM role. Um, but it's still the same software development cycle. It's still the same everything else. The only thing that's changed is where, how, and how quickly that code is being generated.
Mm.
My
Now, one
friend
thing. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
My friend likes to call the LLMs their non-deterministic code generators, which is true. But you know what else is a non-deterministic code generator? Literally every engineer.
Our brain. Yeah.
Our brain is a non-deterministic code generator. We're all going to generate weird code, sometimes really bad stuff. Even the most senior experienced person sometimes generates crazy.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because we always like people are like, oh, well, these things are, non-deterministic. It's like, well, yeah, just like we are, right?
So am
I
I.
mean,
So is the
I
new
forgot to
college
have my
hire.
coffee this morning, so my code looks better or worse
Exactly. I
or
stayed up too late.
whatever.
I wasn't paying attention. I was
Yeah, I was
distracted. I wrote,
distracted. Yeah.
you know,
So it's not that different. Now, I know a lot of people are teasing apart the difference between vibe coding and what, a year or two ago we called kind of code completion or leveraging Gen AI to help us build code. Do you see those as different things, or do you think really that's just kind of maturity of the LLMs and this idea of agents and things like that? Like, where do you put it in a spectrum of uses of AI? Do you have any thoughts on that?
yeah, I think we are in a fundamentally different place because our role and expectation is shifting. So
Mm,
almost exactly a year ago, I was at Star West working on some fun project. Actually, we can look at some of the code for it. It's a thing that I wrote by hand. I wrote the whole thing myself. It's a toy, but it's a toy for training, so it's a useful toy.
mm,
And I was sitting outside after a bunch of sessions with a couple of guys. Jason Arbon is one, and I was trying to debug some Docker problem that I couldn't
mm,
get the container to start. There was some issue with Docker. I'm pretty good at Docker, but YAML files are not my favorite.
mm,
And I was sitting there copy pasting into ChatGPT. I'd do something, get an error message, paste it into ChatGPT, then it would give me some suggestion, and then I would go back into my IDE. I would implement the suggestion, get a new message, paste it back in. And it was AI assisted. I was getting further than I would if I had to go to put in a query to a search engine and go to Stack Overflow, right? It was
mm,
faster. But then they said, hey, what if you try this new paradigm? It's even faster still. Download this tool called Cursor. And I said, I know what I'm doing. I don't need an AI to tell me what to do. I just need faster doc searching. Right. So all
mm.
I wanted in that old paradigm was faster doc searching because it's annoying to search through 11 million. I don't know if anybody's tried to read the Terraform docs. They're the worst.
Yeah.
They're so hard to read. Um, and so I flipped and I gave up because I had spent 2 hours trying to solve this problem and I just said, I'm gonna try this thing. And then I get to
Mm.
laugh at Jason about how it didn't actually help me at all.
Silly
Um,
Jason.
Silly Jason, what does he know anyway? And sure enough, within 5 minutes, after I spent hours and hours again, I know how to write Terraform. I know how all these things work, but within 10 minutes, it identified that I had had an indentation error in the wrong place because
Mm,
the difference between me copy pasting into the thing and not was context. So the magical thing that happened to us about a year ago is AI suddenly were able to get a lot more context, and to begin indexing your code or what you're doing, to get a better idea of, oh, this is what's actually happening, and I can give you a more
mm,
accurate, more useful response. And then from there, because they were already in my context, they became able to have a conversation and then able to run tools within that context. And that's how we switched from this is a helper, it's helping me, to no, this is literally a partner.
mm,
If I'm old enough to remember extreme programming and pair programming,
pair
then
programming.
you would be sharing, right? You'd be sharing an IDE, you'd be sharing a terminal. You now have that same level of I'm not just consulting extra docs. I am literally working with a virtual partner, um, to move 2x, 5x, 10x faster than I could on my own because it knows exactly the context of what's going on here and can interact directly, with my code, with my tools, with my environment. Can run Docker for me. Can run Selenium tests. It can do pretty much anything, which was inconceivable, 12 plus 2 months ago or however long ago that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, it hasn't been very long. So let's dive into the testing aspects of this. I mean, we're here to talk about how vibe coding applies to the software testing process. And can you talk a little bit about, are there specific nuances, or is it just code is code is code and process is process is process? And also, what are the pros and cons that you found in using tools to do software testing in a vibe coding kind of manner?
Yeah, vibe coding is still garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what you're
Mm,
doing with testing and you're going to rely on the LLM's baseline advice, I hate to say this, but most of the world's pretty bad at testing. A lot
mm,
there's a non-zero amount of devs that make unit tests pass by deleting the asserts. So what does the
hmm,
LLM do? Well, if you don't give any guidance, it will make your unit test pass by deleting the asserts. We all know That's not good testing practice. We all know that, but
Yeah.
the universe, if we look across the universe of everything these LLMs have been trained off of, we may or may not like that definition of good. And so it's our job as the arbiters, as the managers, whatever role we want to call it, the AI manager, to enforce our definition of what is good testing and then have the AI help us implement and reach our definition of good. It is very, very good about being constrained and giving requirements, giving gates, giving things it's got to pass, and then meeting your expectations. It's not so good
Mm.
when you just say, hey, can you test my code for me, please? Period. You're going to get
Yeah.
probably some garbage. Just like if you asked some random guy off the street who maybe possibly
Mhm.
knows how to write code, will you test this for me? You're probably going to get some garbage. If without your definition of good, here's my application. It's a mobile app. We're using whatever our web framework is. We're using these unit tests. We're in this language. The app is meant to do this. Without you, the human, providing that information, you're going to slow yourself down and you're going to get a bunch of junk. So we still need to be able to provide that human in the loop expertise for our definition of good for all of the tests we do.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we forever in testing have talked about the fact that, if your requirements are vague, they're ambiguous, they're high level, it should be no great surprise that we build the wrong thing or we test it incorrectly because
Hmm.
you don't have enough context to do it properly as a human. These tools are exactly the same way. We have to give them and maybe even more specificity about what we're looking for. And I love your comment about how the LLMs are trained, because this is something we talk about in our fundamentals class, is that you have to remember these tools were trained on typically open source information.
Hmm.
And there's lots of great open source out there. There's also a lot of really bad open source out there. It's been trained on it all. Now the tools are getting better at parsing through and figuring out what good means and eradicating things like security issues and other things that maybe it learned, right? But they're still not perfect, and it still means human in the loop
Exactly.
for
12
these
months
tools
from
to
now.
write. You're not going to sit on the beach and have AI do your job for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, not without some relatively frequent checkpoints and a really
Yeah,
strong
exactly.
definition of done. I mean, you can spin up if you get very crisp with it, you can spin up a couple of agents and have
Mm,
a my tire too, but you still had to provide, this is what you're doing, this is what good looks like. Um,
yeah.
or you're
Well,
gonna,
also you mentioned they spin off sometimes too, right? Like sometimes it gets confused, and I've even gotten in infinite loops where it just keeps trying the same thing over and over again. And for some reason, it hasn't figured out that it already tried this and it didn't work. And I'm like, no, you did that. Stop doing that. And it circles back around on itself. And eventually you just have to stop it and say, wait,
right.
let's start over here. This is
Yeah,
not
you're
a
missing
converge.
something, you're in the weeds. Look, just like you'd fish a it happens to new hires, interns, especially all the time. Just like you'd have to fish an
Mhm.
intern out of a hole and say, look, I get it,
Yeah.
but let's reset and let's go back to the context and our known definition of good.
Mhm.
You have to do the same thing with your agent.
I've heard some people say that as well. Some people say, well, it's pair programming, it's a peer, and that I agree in a lot of cases that works well. I've also heard people say, well, it's like having a smart intern, which is,
On day
if you're
one.
using your intern to do the coding piece of the overall puzzle, but the real challenge is figuring out how to specify, architect, design what you need and make it something that's also consistent, repeatable, high quality scales, that it's like your intern doing the more mundane, maybe manual types of things in a more automated way, in some situations. Would you agree
Yeah.
with that kind of analogy? Sometimes I think it's
Sometimes.
moving to pair, but sometimes it's not smart enough to totally pair, and you have to kind of shepherd it along, it seems like.
Sometimes. So it's the smartest, fastest intern you've ever had.
Well, yeah, it's
It's always
quick.
on day one. Every day is day one for this intern. You
Yeah.
can make day one more or less effective in the same way you would for onboarding, right? You can have good
Mm.
docs, you can have good architecture docs, good diagrams, good onboarding stuff that you feed to it to shorten the pain of that day one, but it is always on day one. Look, your
Mm.
intern may be like a ridiculous PhD out of Caltech who's the expert of the expert of the expert of architecture. They may be, right? And they can be highly, highly effective at what they know. But the issue is because they're on day one, they don't know and will never know your context without you providing that through. There's a lot of ways to provide it. Again, a lot of ways to put your
Yeah.
thumb on the scale. But fundamentally, every time you open a new chat session, you're beginning day one all over again.
Cool. And in terms of testing, so the entire software testing SDLC, right, from upfront test requirements and specs to plans to strategy to plans to test cases to automation to analysis of the results to remediation of problems. Is there anything you can't apply? You know, agentic AI or these types of technologies and tools too? Or do you feel like it's getting pretty good across the entire life cycle of software testing?
It's pretty good at everything. Honestly, depending on the tool you're using, so it's just a matter of tools, right? Can it call into
Mhm.
Selenium? Can it grab into a WebDriver by itself and start messing around with a website? Maybe some of them can. Um, they're very good. They're very good at just about anything if you can constrain it. Where I would hesitate to turn it over into an AI rather than to do it as a collaborative session would be things like generating my test cases. Because again,
Mm.
that's so closely tied to your definition of good. If you have really good requirements, maybe you can have it generate your test cases, but you need to look at those with a fine tooth comb
Mhm.
about what exactly is it doing? What is it missing? What is it not thought of? What assumptions has it made? Um, but I have my LLM writing, I have it writing YAMLs for Terraform. I have it writing my CI
Mm.
code. I have it writing, generating test cases, generating boilerplate for test cases, with guidance, right? Implementing my architecture, making changes to make code more testable. Again, with guidance, I've had it build frameworks for me. But it's not, I said to the AI, hey, go build me a test framework. Bye. We spec'd out, here's my
Yeah.
problem, here's my code base, here's what I need, here's how this is going to run, here's the architecture of the software under test, and iteratively build a spec together. And then I can hand that spec to another AI and say, great,
Mm.
implement part one, part two, part three, great. Now implement the first test case. Now let's run the test case. It's certainly faster, right? And I could do this in I don't write
Mhm.
Python very well. I could do this in Python because the standards and what I know about testing in general applies to, okay, well, I'm doing it in PyTest instead of in MS
Yeah.
Test or instead of in JUnit. So it gives me a lot more flexibility um, to implement my definition of good, regardless of implementation details.
That's
So it's very
great.
good at
And
those.
you alluded to something else I feel these tools are really good at that we spend a lot of time doing, which is debugging. Like if something doesn't work, I mean, it's my go-to. I just say, "Hey, here's the error. What's going on?" It'll not always, but it's amazing how often it can, and you mentioned fast, quickly identify what the problem is and suggest a solution. And for the most part, it gets that right. And we spend so much time digging through and debugging things often that we can't
Mhm.
figure out why something isn't working or isn't even compiling sometimes, or another issue. These tools are really good at that kind of analysis.
Yeah, I say just like how you have a hard time reading your own essays and finding your
Mm,
misspellings and finding your missing words, sometimes we have a hard time debugging our own code, looking through what mistake did I make? And
mhm.
because it's on day one every day, it has no bias. There's no bias. Oh, I wrote this, therefore I can't see what I wrote. It doesn't have that. And
Yeah.
so because it comes in with that sort of purity of vision, it can be very good at putting together just the facts on the table and not our mental overlay of it. Though I will say one thing I haven't seen a tool yet, which I just because I haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I
Mm,
haven't yet seen a tool that can do true debugging for me, right? Setting a
mm,
breakpoint, running, generating traffic. Maybe there's one that
yeah.
can. The LLMs tend to like to debug by adding log lines, dumping many log lines into your code,
Yes. Yeah.
varying usefulness and quality.
It wants to see output. Well,
Mhm.
it wants text, so it
It
can look
wants
at
text.
it and do something. Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yeah. So let's talk about tools and jump into. I know you're going to show some stuff and give the audience a little bit of a flavor for how these things work. You mentioned Cursor. That sounds like one of your go-to tools.
Yeah.
What tools do you find helpful? And maybe we could jump into some, showing some examples of these tools in action.
Yeah, so there's a lot of options. There's a lot of tools. Just because I'm going to talk about some tools doesn't mean you can't get there with a bunch of others. You can Copilot and VS Code is a valid choice. Claude Code is a valid choice. I know there seems to be some
Mhm.
new person going after the slice of this pie every other
Mm,
day. The important things you need regardless of tool, and we're not gonna talk about full agentic development, where we need agent orchestrators. That's a cool topic, but I think if 75% of you haven't even played with this, we don't want to go there
mm,
yet. Uh,
yeah.
so what you're looking for is an IDE, right? Any kind of IDE that can open code, compile code, embedded AI agent, basically a chat box that can run the code, and that it has full context on everything loaded in, plus the ability to support what's called an MCP, Model Context Protocol, which is basically just a fancy way of saying it's a JSON protocol for an AI agent to call a tool and get more info. There's an MCP for Atlassian, so you can call into Jira and find out what's in this ticket. It's just JSON across a client server interface. It's nothing
Mm,
fancy about MCP. But that's what you need: an IDE that has an AI agent, and the AI agent can call tools. Very, very straightforward. So we're gonna look. I use Cursor because I like Cursor. It was the first one I used. I also like different models for different things. There's not one perfect model. I personally prefer using Gemini for specs and Claude, Anthropic's Claude for writing actual code. I find Claude calls tools better. Claude is more likely in the current iterations to call a tool instead of giving me a block of text I should copy paste into the terminal myself. And it is
mhm,
always faster for it to run the thing itself than for it to wait for me to copy paste. And then I do it over here and then I paste back the feedback, right? Because that's so 2024, right? This is 2025.
mm.
Um,
Soon to be 2026.
don't even joke with me about it. All right. So we want to look at some demos. We want some
Let's
toys.
do it. Yeah, why don't you show some stuff and we can talk about what's going on.
All right. So here we have an IDE. This is Cursor. Um, so I have a little GitHub repo, I think I mentioned, that I used for demos. It is a .NET application. It's open source on my GitHub, so you can go see it if you want. It's nothing super, super fancy. It's just a back end, a front end, and a couple little databases. The databases, it's deployed, but they also run locally. If you're wondering what this application looks like, it looks like this. It is the world's simplest and worst UI. This is running right now. It lets you create recipes. I create them. They're in a list. I can edit them, delete them again. It's a toy, but it's a useful toy because a lot of our server-side applications look something like this.
Something like that. Yep.
Um,
And you mentioned Cursor is a full IDE with agentic capability built in it, right? Like unlike Copilot, which sits in Visual Studio Code or IntelliJ or others as a plugin, Cursor is a full agentic AI
sort
IDE
of.
and vibe coding capability. Is that correct? Is that
Sort of, yeah. Cursor is a fork
yeah?
of VS Code. So
Yeah.
Cursor is
Yeah.
built off of VS Code, but it just has this AI agent here, this chat box is wired in. Like it knows everything that I have.
Yes.
It builds a vector store. It's called a RAG. Um, so it knows exactly what's in all my code, what it's doing, and why it's there. So I could even have it. Um, it's actually funny. I just installed this on a new laptop earlier today, and I went to go run it and said, "Oh, why isn't this running?" And it said, I even told it, "I can't do my Docker Compose isn't working. Go fix it." Because this new laptop turns out I didn't have Docker Desktop installed. And so the agent did this. I didn't do any of this. The agent went through. I just said, "Here's my problem, fix it." Um, the agent went through and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? here's your Docker desktop's not running. I'm going to fix this for you. So went and installed it. Again, this is running tool after tool after tool after tool. I have the Docker CLI, but not desktop. Where is it? Okay, I understand the issue. Here's where we're going to install it. And it did these things. I wasn't even paying attention. It just did these things.
And that gets to your point about like using it as a peer or a pair, is it doesn't just give you the output of what it did, it gives you a dialogue of what it's thinking, what it's doing, how
Exactly.
it's doing what it's doing. So you can review it and make
Mhm.
sure you agree, yep, this is what I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly
Yeah, and
what I would have done. I would have figured out eventually, right? But
I
you
know
just
how
did
to
it
do all
about
these
100
things,
times
right?
faster than I did. I could do it. Yeah.
Exactly. I've done all these things 100,000 times. I know perfectly well how to go install Docker desktop and build my own containers. I know how to do it, which means that me watching somebody else do it, um,
Mhm.
I can spot a problem in an instant, but I don't need the exercise. And it went all the way through creating and starting the containers, making sure they were working. Again, I know these things, I know how to do them, but it did this for me in 3 minutes instead of however 30 minutes it would have taken me to go, right, where's the download for Docker Desktop? It's over here. Where's the thing for this? Oh, I need to restart this. It just handled it so that I would have this up. Just a good example of what I mean by it's my pair. I
Mhm.
told it what I needed, which is, please, I need this to, I need this to work. Here's your solution file. Here's your Docker Compose file. You need to build and start. And it handled the rest.
Yeah, that's great.
Um, and again, that's not even code. That's just the infrastructure around my code. Never
Mhm.
mind getting into things like I have this application here. This application, website. I want to add a dark mode to this website. Right now it's very white. That's great. Cool. You pick some usable colors and add a toggle to the menu bar that goes from light mode to dark mode. So I've done a little bit of helping, right? I've told it this is the CS proj for the front end. I want to add dark mode. I need usable colors.
That's
And
a
I want
key word,
to yeah,
usable.
and I want to toggle a light mode to dark mode toggle on the menu bar. I may Can you show me where the menu bar is in code before you make changes and give me a proposal before you write code? So a couple things here. I am a huge, huge, huge fan of tasks that are a little bit non-deterministic, of asking it to tell me what it's going to do before it goes bananas and just does
Mhm.
things. Because oftentimes it'll do crazy. You don't know, because if you haven't scoped it, I may or may not like its definition of usable. I may not. I said menu bar. That's a little vague. Menu bar could actually be many different things. So I want to know what it's thinking about before I let it go bananas. Other things here, this is in agent mode, not chat mode. I could background this agent and it would just do something on my behalf. I can also pick my models. Because this is a coding task that's going to involve probably some tools, I'm going to leave it on Claude 4. I could pick different models for different tasks. Again, not anything fancy. So we're going to send this. We're going to see what it says. You may notice a couple other things. It
It
generated this
knows your
to-do
name,
list.
number
It
one.
knows my name. This is part of how I set context, and part of how I let it give it its definition of good. We're going to notice do a few other things. I know I mentioned constraining the AI, so we do this with rules. You give it the context about rules. You say, hey, I need you to do this thing and this thing and this thing. I want you to talk to me a certain way. I never, ever, ever want you to tell me again, um, hey, you're absolutely right. I don't know how many times clauses, you're absolutely right. Never say that to me again, man. All right, so let's see what it did. So it's got the proposal. Use a modern color scheme, matches my existing color branding. Fantastic. It's going to use this as light mode. This is dark mode. Okay, fine, I guess. I guess these colors seem fine. It's going to use a CSS variables. It's going to add a toggle button. It picked a sun and moon icon. I didn't ask it to do that, but it's a valid choice. If I didn't like that choice, I could change
Mm.
it right now. Local storage, knows that I'm in Bootstrap, so it's going to keep it in Bootstrap. All right, this is a reasonable choice. We're going to implement it. But you see what I did there? I gave it a loose definition, made it come up with a much tighter definition, and then it and I agreed on the tighter definition. This is a really important part of the feedback loop, and it is no different than working PM to dev, dev to test. You each come with a partial understanding. You have to unite those to a complete understanding, and then you're more likely to get a good outcome. Let's just say I hate writing CSS. It's like the bane of my existence, so I'm so happy
Oh yeah.
something else for me.
Yeah. Talk about a skill that you don't want to have.
Right?
I don't want that taking up a piece of my brain. So that's great. That's great. So it's chugging along and it's basically ticking
Chugging
off all
along.
the things that it said it was going to do. It's just,
Yep. We can look,
hitting
right?
every file. It's, putting in what it thinks the
Yep,
answer is.
with some comments. Seems fine.
Mhm. Nice.
Oh, it's
Yep.
building. It's building.
And
Right.
that's the other thing that's unique about the agents versus some of the code completion stuff that is where this started is, if you tell it to do the whole process, build this, write me unit tests, write me API tests, system tests based on my current, libraries that I'm using. I want you to run it,
Mhm.
debug it, or at least analyze any errors, fix it. I mean, you
Yep.
can tell it to do the whole process,
So
or
an
you
important
can step through if you're not sure you want it to go that far before you figure out it's off the rails, right?
Exactly. So an important set of things just happened here. It implemented it, and then it did a .NET build and did a git commit with an interesting message. This is interesting, right? Because we didn't make a .NET change. We didn't. But part of my definition of done, it's a good example of why the LLM is it's only so smart. My definition of done says a coding session is not satisfied until the build compiles and all the tests pass. Well, it knows I don't have any front end tests. So it said build compile. Sure, we're going to run .NET build.
Mhm.
That's not useful to these changes, but it's technically doing what I said. Even though you would never run a .NET build for a bunch of CSS, like
Yeah.
that's crazy. Um, but that is part of my definition of good. I've got a very minimal set of rules here about making minimal changes, stay within my structure and style. We are not done until the build compiles and the test pass. If don't be on main, if you are on main, go make a branch. When we are done, you need to make a descriptive commit message and merge it. So that we have a way to go backwards when it makes a mistake. There's
Yeah.
nothing worse than being like 9 or 10 requests deep and suddenly it decides to randomly re-architect all your code and now you can't go backwards.
Or delete it. I've heard
Or
people
delete
say,
it.
it decided I didn't need that code. So it
Yep,
just
now it's
deleted
gone.
my repo, right? You're like, what?
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, you gotta be careful.
Right, so I'm gonna have it rebuild and restart the containers. Not that I don't know how to do it. Of course I know how to do that. I do that 11 billion times. Um, but it can also do it for me. So why I can type 9 words and have
Nice.
it write like 17 words. So
But
it's
get it
pretty
right,
easy.
hopefully.
Yeah, to get
Right.
it right. It's not gonna typo it. It's not gonna
Yeah.
fat finger the commands like
Mm.
I am. Yep, so it's gonna rebuild my containers and we should be able to see our toggle here in just a second. And this is not hard work, but it is time consuming work. If we were to do this task, could I have figured out how to do it on my own? Of course I could have. Would have taken me a couple of hours and some docs and a lot of cognitive function.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right. I've saved my cognitive function for the hard part of deciding what actually do I need to build? What does the definition of good look like? How is success defined? I've used some to review while it's going and make sure it's doing the right thing. But I'm able to get through a lot more because I'm able to focus on the things that are really differentiators and leave the details like, what should I name the CSS field? And what's a good descriptive name? And should it be this slight shade or this slight shade of blue? I don't, for my definition of good, I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I am able to outsource that somewhere else so I can focus on the really hard problems. All right, we're up. Let's see what happened
Let's
here.
see what it looks like.
See what it looks like. Force refresh. Light mode. Right, that toggle's a little funky. Dark mode's a little weird, but it
Mhm.
implemented something, right? Did it implement exactly what I asked us to do? Yep. Is this good?
Yeah.
Not yet. Right, but we can iterate. I can tell it exactly what's not right. Like, hey, the background of my actual pages are still white. You missed something. Um, I don't want the sun
Yeah.
and I don't want the moon to represent. I want this icon to represent the current mode I'm in, not the other mode. Right, I can now play with my interactivity with my which my users want. I can do some user acceptance testing on this. I've saved the time from implementation to now focusing on iterating on what's really good for my users.
And same thing for the test for that, right? So you could write a test and your agentic cursor could write a test to test and validate that this change was done properly, that this toggle was there and working. So
Exactly.
there's a way to carry that all the way through the testing process too.
Exactly. Go run my integration tests. Right, I just taught it how to run integration tests. It's a little weird in that tiny little terminal.
Hmm.
My integration tests have just passed. I could have it write a new integration test for this. I could have it explain to me. Integration tests are covering. If you were a test expert, what testing functionality would you add to them to protect the users of my site? The output is a markdown plan, not code. Do not start
Do
generating a bunch
not
of
write code.
garbage. It's also really good for helping us to understand. Is it going to get things wrong? Probably. Is it going to be at least as accurate as an intern? I said, hey, go write a report on this and tell me about it. Or any of my docs that are never out of date, right? We never, ever have out
No.
of date docs. So it's going to be as accurate as the average doc, useful for helping me figure out what is happening here, and being able to dig in deeper and get to targeted places where I need to. And it's not a replacement for docs. It's only as useful as your docs, but it can help you update them. All right, what did it come up with? Choo-choo-choo.
Lots of good stuff.
Yeah, here's my smoke tests. The homepage loads, all the pages load successfully. They have at least 10 bytes. Those are good smoke tests. Do your pages load? They load at least 10 bytes of content. Fantastic.
Something there.
Something is there. My integration tests on the back end. Can we generate JWTs? So can we author the back end? Can we do basic CRUD on our recipes? Yes, we can. Fantastic. Okay, those are important functionalities. It's correct, by the way. Like I do know this. This is correct. We have some infrastructure that supports different environments, some shared test bases, categorization. This is all accurate. And so I told it to generate Markdown. It kind of generated Markdown. Not the best output. Gemini is a lot better at writing an actual Markdown spec. Authentication and authorization testing. We don't have any. True. That's true. I do not have any tests right now on user registration or login. Also true, right? We should probably be testing against data protection. We do no input, no validation whatsoever on anything. Again, it's toy, it's true. If I was going to ship a production system, I would probably agree with some of this. Maybe not all of it, but some.
Mhm.
Protect the user experience. Okay, sure. Yep. Test our new dark mode. Test
That'd be
accessibility.
good.
Yep, yep, yep. So this is good. Like this is a place to start. Is not a place to end, but it's a place to start. So if I was the new tester assigned to this code base, this is how I would start. Explain to me what this code base does. Let's run it. Um, what's already tested? Look at the code. What's not tested yet? And then I can go from there with what I actually know of business, right? What's important to my business? What are my users asking for? What do I know that's important to the next few features we're writing? And I can take this information and put that in, again, I like to work iteratively with AI, put that in together to come up with a test plan. What am I going to test next? Where am I going to put testing in? Where can I not test because we don't have the right hooks or the right environment or the right configuration? And I could generate a very realistic test plan very quickly. Right? Did I have to go open a million files and look at this and parse the Docker files and parse? No, I don't have to do any of that. I will have to spot check to make sure things aren't crazy. I wrote this, so I happen to know it's true, but you should always spot check what the AI is giving you because it can lie very convincingly. But you can see how this can save you a lot of time and help you get through code bases where you don't understand the language. You can get through
Yeah.
in Go. I've never read Go in my life. I could get through some Go and figure out how I'm going to test it with knowledge that previously only a dev would have had.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Awesome. Well, let's shift gears and thanks for that, Melissa. That was a great demo.
Yeah, it was fun.
If you could stop sharing for a second, we're going to jump back into the slides real quick. And we do have some offers for you all, and then we're going to jump into questions for us. Anybody that's interested in some upcoming learning opportunities, we have some. Melissa has some. On the Coveros side, we have some upcoming live virtual classes, various AI classes that we have that are popular coming up in the next couple of months. In addition to, we're also teaching our fundamentals of AI, AI for testers, and AI for leaders at the Star West conference. Melissa mentioned both Melissa and I will be there coming up here in Anaheim. And then we have Star Canada up in Toronto about a month later for those that are up north, if you will, or want to travel to Toronto and see the sites up there. As a thank you for people that attended here today, there's some discount codes for Star West and Star Canada down below. Just use those codes to save on registrations for those conferences. Hope to see you there. Melissa, you want to talk about where you're speaking and what you're doing coming up here?
That's right. So I have a couple sessions at Star West, and outside of those, I'm always available, usually hanging out at the test lab to talk about vibe coding, what we're doing, making strategies. And after Star West, I'm going to be at the Tech Futures event in New York City. So if you're going to be in and around New York in October, I'm going to be running a workshop, hands-on workshop on vibe coding and how you can solve problems with just an IDE and some really good ideas and good communication skills.
Nice. Yeah, no, looking forward to Star West. That's cool. One thing, just an FYI for everyone, and there'll be a QR code that you can get more information, is recently at Coveros, we built out an agentic AI reference architecture that we use when we're helping people figure out how to apply agentic AI to your solution, whether it's simple and basic, or you're trying to do a multi-agent solution. This architecture supports that. It's got all sorts of great stuff around principles, design patterns, how to address and deal with non-functional requirements in your solution, like security and reliability and robustness, things like that. Also comes with reference implementation information that's very useful. If you want to grab more information, hit the QR code here. There's a checklist through the testing process, figure out where the gaps and challenges might be, where you're spending most of your time. Just kind of think through where AI might be a good place to start if you're just getting started with agentic AI. And also, if you want to just brainstorm a little bit, we are offering a free one-on-one discussion around, doing in your testing process, how are you trying to use AI? You give you some thought advice. That's a thank you for everyone that's this event. So feel free to take up on that well. So that one of the questions. I saw stuff by the top statement.
Yeah. So info from public info, or trust verify that the private info securely won't be leaked to other AI users or directly used for training AI systems.
So I have to assume, well, let me put it this way. There is two variants of what we're talking about here with AI. There's the public one that particular enterprise guarantees, which you assume you put in there is being used for training data. And then there are the ones on enterprise license, a whatever, not that. The first one, I would just proceed with extreme caution. The second one, I am comfortable leaving to the lawyers to fight about if and it does come out that that is happening. So everybody's corporate stance may be a little different. For us, I am comfortable that that will be a legal problem. And the reason I'm comfortable with that is what I'm finding with the ability to generate so quickly is that any individual code, paragraph, algorithm is less and less critical because almost somebody rebuilt Uber in 3 days, basically their case. So the sanctity of individual bits of our code or functions is just a lot less than it was a year ago, the value of that IP.
Yeah, I think what you're getting to, Melissa, same thing we've seen is if you're getting it for free, assume all of your data is going somewhere and being used. So if you have anything that's proprietary or you're worried about from an IP perspective, do not use free solutions. Sorry, you can't. Those are for proof of concept, trying stuff out, playing around, or just doing hobby type stuff. Buy at least a business level. There's usually multiple levels to these tools, depending on the products that give you protection, and read your license agreement. What does it say they're allowed to do with your data? What does it say they're allowed to do with what you put into the tools? And then usually, I know for instance, GitHub Copilot has a really nice, they call it a trust center on their website that walks through and tells you everything that they can and cannot do with your information, where it lives, how it's encrypted when it's sent in transit to their server, how it how it's encrypted when it sits somewhere, or does it ever sit anywhere, or is it always in memory? Make sure you dig through and understand for your IP protection, what the rules are of engagement for any of these tools.
Yeah, they were forced to mature quite quickly as they went from toys to something trying to sell to enterprise customers. And
Yeah.
so if you looked at it 12 months ago and you're like, this is a joke, look again
Yep.
because
Totally different.
they got forced to mature in their privacy practices.
Yeah, well, we do lots of Copilot implementations because we are a GitHub Microsoft partner. So we see Copilot a lot. That's the first question you get that we get, usually from the security person that shows up at the call, right? And they want to know
Exactly.
specifically what's going on with this data. So you need to have those. If you're going to try these tools in your enterprise, your environment, you need to have the answers to those things. And you can either get them from us, you can get them from a site like, Copilot or Cursor, or whatever. You can get them from somebody, else in your organization that's researched it, but make sure you have those answers.
Yep.
Great. Here's a question about Cursor. Does Cursor need to run as root for the tool to be able to install and run apps?
It does not need to run as root. I am on a Mac. It is installing as using Homebrew to install into my user account. It will occasionally do something that will require my root password, and it will ask, not Cursor won't ask me, like my terminal of Brew will ask me, for example. And then I'll have to give it for things like installing Docker. But 99% of the time, you don't even need extra permissions. It's just running as your user. It's popping up a terminal literally in your user shell.
Great. What are good practices for describing rules of how to use OOP?
Does that mean object-oriented programming? Or does it mean, is there a definition I don't know for OOP?
Who wrote that? Whoever submitted that question can answer that. Just send that. Yes. Yes was the response.
I would say the good practices for describing rules of how to use OOP are the same as any describing how to use any specific architecture. right? Which is to set up, there's a structure, it's very newly adopted called agents.md. It's the standard the AI IDs are all kind of aligning on, where you can set contextual instructions for your agent. So a good practice would be, I need an agents.md in the root of my repo that says every code change needs to be using object-oriented programming, and here's the author or the model that I like. Remember, the LLM was probably trained on a bunch of different flavors. So the more specific you can be about, here's the flavor I like, here's what's important, here's how we're going to enforce it, and all other architectural decisions being equal, you need to go in this direction, would just be, I would put it in an agents.md at the root of my repo.
Is it fair, Melissa, to say like there's different components to getting good quality out of these tools? One is obviously the specificity of your prompts and what you ask it to do. Two is the guidance you give it in terms of kind of rules of engagement for your code structure, your best practices, the things you just alluded to. And then three is any kind of context that you can share with it, coding standards, other things,
Right.
internal docs or information, guidelines, regulations, compliance. Are there other things that you're going to want to make sure get included, or does that encompass really what you kind of want to set up to get good results out of these tools?
I would also include automated checks, because guidance is good, but an automated check
Mm,
really closes the loop. So if you can
that's
set
great.
up, I don't know, I'm sure some of these are going to be out of date. Set up a linter for, this is
Mm.
what I need my things to look like, or a style cop, or some kind of a test validation. Anything that you can do that will give a pass fail on a change, which is direct feedback to the AI about, oop, I messed this up. Because just like you can give a bunch of test require or boundary cases to a dev and they can implement them, they can easily miss one or forget one. But if you give them a suite of tests that validate those boundary conditions, they're going to know instantly, oh, failed, I forgot to check for null.
That's great.
Those are the questions we got. We're just right at time. Oh, there's one more. Isn't there risk in coding deep architectural aspects that need to be extendable?
Yes, there's a risk in everything. So I can't tell you the right or wrong. I can only tell you to start light and get deeper, and iterate. You're not going to get it right the first time. You're not going to get it right the first 3 times, but eventually you will get something right, and that will make your speed go like this. But there's no like magic wand or silver bullet to just make it do architecture correctly for your definition of correct.
Well, yeah, and remember how these things are trained. I mean, it gets back to how these LLMs are trained. They're trained on only things they've seen, right? And they've been given access to. So one of the things, just also understand what you're trying to accomplish. For instance, if you're using an LLM that's only been trained on open source stuff, how much open source COBOL is out there? Probably not a massive amount. That's not a language that often people in the open source community are using. So how much training has been done on COBOL? If you're asking your system to translate from COBOL to some modern language, you're doing a modernization, or you're working in COBOL and you want it to make suggestions, just realize that you may not get as accurate of a response as if it's in a modern language that it's been trained a lot on. Now, these models are acquiring code bases. They're now paying to get access to proprietary code bases that they're whitewashing and training on to try to fix this problem. But just remember, whatever your model hasn't been trained on, probably those are areas that it's not going to do that great. And to the question and your point, Melissa, if you're doing something very arcane and complex, and maybe it's embedded type systems or something that you're like, how much open source or how much code out there is going to apply to this? Just realize you might get less of an accurate response for situations like that than if you're doing
Yeah.
something that's pretty common, right? Any
The
thoughts on
mental
that, Melissa?
Yeah, the mental model I'd really encourage everybody to use is, you've just hired some hotshot dev out of Google or Facebook or Microsoft, and they know a lot of stuff, but it's their day one and they've never been in your code base before. How would you have that hotshot dev making good architectural choices on their first commit? It's the same thing.
That's a good way to look at it.
You communicate
Yep.
it with slight differences. You wouldn't have a verbal talk. You would have a doc for the AI, but it's not fundamentally any different than you got one, or you got 5 hotshot devs from Google. It's day one. How do you get a good output from them?
Yeah, I know we're about out of time, Todd. One question we didn't get to that I think we could just answer, because usually it's top of mind, is should you be worried about your job? Is AI going to take your job? I hope you're leaving this with an understanding that yes, AI can add productivity and can do some things way faster than humans are, but unless a human is directing and not allowing it to be a garbage in, garbage out scenario and being very specific, you're not going to get good results. And you have to be constantly checking and reviewing the results. And all that means that those who can do those tasks, I mean, that's the critical thinking, what a good software engineer gets paid to do. They don't get paid to write YAML, right? Or
Get paid for a line
CSS.
of code.
They get paid to solve problems, specify things, architect and design things, and then vet and verify that the answer is correct. We as humans still need to do some of that. We can't let AI take that over.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
any thoughts, Melissa, on that?
I can't promise you that one day it won't know the definition of how to solve problems for our customers, but it doesn't know that today, and it probably won't know that next week or next month. So as long as you know, this is what good looks like for my business, this is what good looks like for my customer, we still need you, right? Your company still needs you to provide that context, regardless if you're handing it to a team of developers or an AI agent or a team of agents. We still need that. It's critical, and that's hard to replicate.
Yep. Awesome. Back to you, Todd.
Well, I think that concludes the webinar. Thanks, everyone. We obviously shared a lot of resources. We'll be sure to share those out via email along with the recording of this session in the next day or two. Thanks for joining us. And if you have any questions, be sure to email Jeff or our team at info@coveros.com. Thanks all.
Thanks, Todd. And thanks, Melissa, for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love it.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yep. See you soon in Anaheim.